Thanks very much for joining me again. This video is going to be about another homemade tool. There is already a video on this tool, which is an 8x8 square tool, which was fairly straightforward because it involved drilling just a straight hole down the middle. Fairly straightforward. It is one of my favourite tools, I have to say. But there was another tool that I hadn't got, and that was a half round scraper, and I wanted to make one of these, and the video you're about to see is of me making those. When I did the video, I had absolutely no intention of selling the tool steel whatsoever, and then having made it, I thought, it's actually a bit disappointing sometimes when you see a video and think, that's quite a good idea, I'd like to have a go at it, and you can't get the bits to do it. I've come across quite a few videos like that. So what we've actually managed to do is to locate a tool steel like so, and we sell that with one of our insert kits, and it comes in a bag like that, all labelled up like most of our kits do. Now the tool you're going to see me make in the video is this one here, and this tool steel is 4mm thick. When I made this, it works fine, but I wasn't entirely happy with the fact that it's only 4mm thick. There is just the very slightest flex in it because it's actually quite long. So what we've managed to do is to locate another tool steel. This is 6mm thick, so it's 6mm that way, 16mm across there, and 200mm long. So when you see the video and see some of my measurements, if you're going to follow it, then you have to allow for an extra couple of millimeters on the tool steel, but this one most certainly does not flex in any way at all. But just be aware that the one we sell is 6mm, the one you'll see on the video is 4mm. The principle is exactly the same, and the principle, unlike a square tool that you can see here that just has a round hole in the end, I've actually fitted a ferrule. I didn't need to because it doesn't do anything. That had a round hole. When you're doing one of these, a half round scraper, and you've got a flat tool steel, it's no good having a round end in there, because it won't work. It's as simple as that. So what we need to do is to get a profile like that, and that is what I'm going to show you today, how I made the handle for the tool steel and sharpened both ends of it. So I've actually got a flat-ended scraper and a half-rounded scraper, and I can slot that in and out and use both ends of the tool steel. That's the principle behind this. Not one end where I'm losing all the tool steel down here, but a double-ended tool to make it really good value and hopefully really worthwhile. And of course you only have to store one tool as well. So we'll carry on with the video. I hope it's useful, and as I said before, we do actually now stock the tool steels if you want to get hold of one. So I've got my tool steel, which is 16mm, near enough bang on. I'm going to just give myself, I'm actually going to make it 16.5mm, just for a little bit of room on there. And now I'm going to turn this little bit of wood to that diameter. The reason I left the ends square is so I could pop it on the bandsaw and then cut this into two pieces. I've then cut the relevant length, which is 60mm. In actual fact, what I've done is put it on the sander and sand this down, because what I'm looking to do is to get the tool steel sandwiched in between those parts there and get the correct diameter there. Now what I'm going to do in a minute is get the tool handle and drill out the 16mm hole. I'm then going to put a little leaf in between the tool steel and the piece of wood on either side, and we're then going to push this in and glue this in place. When it's glued, we're just going to be gluing the wood, but when we've done that, what we're going to do is to then remove the tool steel, and what we should have hopefully is a nice handle with the correct shaped centre for the tool steel to slot into. I've got a big old chunk of wood that's going to be my handle. I'm just going to turn this round at the moment, and I'm going to set this in the chuck, get the Jacob's chuck at the tail end, and I'm going to drill the 16mm hole down the centre. So I've got some dovetail jaws at this end, and I cut a little dovetail in this blank here. I've lined it up, I've put the tailstock in so we're nice and central, and you'll see that spinning nice and centrally. We already have the mark here, so I'm now going to pop the Jacob's chuck in this end and then drill my 16mm hole all the way through, around about 60mm through. Now on my tailstock I've got graduation, so I don't need to mark the drill bit, but if you need to mark the drill bit you can measure from the flat end up to 60mm and then just pop a bit of tape around there so you know how far you're going to go, or how far you need to go through the blank. I'm using an auger bit. There's a variety of different drill bits that you can use that are 16mm. It doesn't really matter which one, it's whichever you prefer. I just happen to have this. 16mm is a standard size in an auger bit, so if you have auger bits, chances are you've got one of these. Standard length one, which should be fine to go through. Just on a slow speed, I'm probably going to go around about 600, 500, 600, something like that on here, and just go through the right distance, and then we'll look at inserting the tool steel. And now hopefully, if I zoom in on this a little bit, I've not tried this yet, so I've done this all in one take. You'll be hopefully be able to see the principle behind what I'm actually trying to do here, which is sandwich those together and pop that in the hole. It's a bit tight at the moment, I have to say, because I've also got to get a little sandwich piece in there, so I might have to take a little bit more out of here. I might just pop the tool in there and just give that a turn if I can, just to make it just a fraction bigger on the inside. To enlarge this bit slightly bigger, what I'm actually going to do is use the tool steel itself. I am, however, going to put a glove on for this, just to hollow that out. It's completely flat at the end, so I should pop that in there. And I'm hoping that now we've done that, we'll be able to get the wood and the tool steel and sandwich it together and see if we can, yes we can, slot that in there. It's quite tight, but frankly we want it to be tight. So what I'm doing is I've just got a bit of A4 paper. It probably won't surprise you to know that this is cheap A4 paper that we do the printing of the orders on and stuff like that. I've cut some scraps. I'm just going to fold it into three. You really don't need a huge gap, or don't really want a huge gap between the tool steel and the pieces of wood we're going to insert. And what we're going to do now is just pop those bits of wood on there. And what I've actually done, as you'll see, is make my paper a bit too thick, so I'm going to trim a little bit of that off again. But basically what we're going to do is sandwich those pieces in there. We're going to pop some glue up and down here, and we're then going to insert it in there, wait for it to dry, and then hopefully we'll be able to remove the tool steel, and the tool steel should fit nice and tightly in the hole that we have left. Now what I've done, partly for your benefit so you can see what I've done, and partly for mine because occasionally I'm a bit cack-handed, is just put a little bit of tape around this end of the section we're going to insert into the handle. So hopefully you can see there's the hardwood, I think it's beech this, hardwood either side, tool steel in the centre, and a couple of bits of folded paper just to make sure that there's enough room for that tool steel to slot in and out when we finished. So I'm going to glue this now, put it 3/4 of the way through, then I'll take this tape off and make sure the glue is spread up there and insert the whole thing inside. I'm using wood glue. You might decide to use something different. It is of course entirely up to you. So because my hole was fractionally too big, and this is because I concentrate on the camera, not on the piece of wood, I've just put a little wedge in there to make sure that the wood is squashed up nice and tight against the handle here. And what I'm now going to do is go and have a cup of coffee and wait for this to set. Coffee finished. All this stuff in here should now be dry, so we're now just going to grab hold of the steel and remove it out of the centre. There we go. And the bits of paper have come out as well. I obviously haven't measured quite right. There's a tiny little bit of wood sticking out at the end. Let me just zoom in. Hopefully you can see that a bit better. So I'm just going to trim this off now, and hopefully you can see that the tool steel is now going to slot in there. And now what we need to do is use the wood insert screw in here to secure this, to make sure it's firmly fixed in there, so we're ready to use it. So I can now just hold my thumb at the end of the tool. Not sure whether the camera, but I'm going to hold my thumb at the end of the tool there, and then just put it on the top just to check the distance that I've got along here. And what we're going to do is actually fix the wood insert screw at about halfway. That's about 50mm, so it's about there. It's not critical. I'm just marking a little line there. I'm now going to put the tool steel back in, because when we use the wood insert screw and the grub screw in the top, we need that to be absolutely perpendicular with the tool steel. It doesn't want to be going in at an angle. Sorry, I'm trying to watch the camera so you can. There we go. It doesn't want to be going in like that. It needs to be going absolutely like that. So I've got a little square here. I'm just going to lie that on the top there. How am I going to do this? I'm going to mark a line up there, and then a line across there, and then bring that line over there, and that hopefully will get me perpendicular in the top. I now need to drill that and insert the wood insert screw and then the grub screw on top of that, so we can secure the tool steel in there. Now I've been across to the drill press. What I've done is I've drilled a small pilot hole down to start with, then an 11.5mm hole, and then I've put a little countersink in the top. And what I'm now going to do is insert the wood insert screw down there. These are tough as old boots, but if you need to take off the bottom, if it's fractionally too long, then you can do. And what I need is an 8mm hex key, which I've conveniently left the other side of the workshop. I'll go and get that now, and we'll screw this in, and then look at how the grub screw is going to work with the tool steel. Now that's quite neat, but we do need to make sure that this wood insert screw doesn't come through the hole in the centre and stop the tool steel sliding back. And also when we turn it, we need to make sure that we don't turn down this any further around this section. You can leave it sticking out slightly if you want to, it just looks a little bit odd. But you do need a certain thickness of wood there. You need a certain amount of strength in order to take one of these wood insert screws, because they are pretty tough and they do put pressure on the wood. So if this part's too thin and you try and screw one of those in, you might split the wood. And we'll just get the tool steel and check in there, and that does fit in okay. So we'll then just try the grub screw in the top and make sure that that's working. I've got a spare insert here. The grub screws are flat on the bottom, which is what we want, to press flat down onto the tool steel. And that's when it's tightened down. I have got another right size Allen key. Here we go. Tighten that down. That's going to hold the tool steel nice and firm in there. So we're now ready to really finish turning the handle part. So a little bit of finishing. I'm going to cut that end off just by hand and just finish by hand and I'll probably just put sanding sealer on this for the time being, and we'll pop the bits in, and then all we need to do is actually sharpen the chisel. Now, I don't have in my collection a half round scraper, so what I've done, I've taken a protractor and a pencil, and I've just marked, you'll see a couple of lines on there probably. I can't quite decide where to trim it down to, but I'm just going to pop that on the bench grinder and gradually grind that down to get the right shape, and then sharpen it off. Just remember, you need plenty of water when you're grinding it down, and then I'll think of something to do with the other end. And having done one end, I have to say at this point quite roughly, I can of course undo the handle, turn it round, and I'm now ready to shape this end as well. Two tools in one. Well, this is green wood, but this as yet isn't honed, it's only sharpened roughly, so with a bit of honing the answer is yes, it actually works rather well. When I started, the criteria was not really to fit that into a handle with one end. That would be done the traditional way by making a tang at this end and having a ferrule on here to stop this splitting. What I wanted to do is get two tools out of one piece of tool steel, and that's what I've managed to do. We don't sell these. We do sell some other tool steels, but we don't sell very many of them, to be honest. But it's just really to give you an idea of what you can do if you can get a flat tool steel, make two tools out of one. Of course, the manufacturers don't want you to make two tools out of one. They want to sell you two tools themselves. So I hope that's maybe giving you an idea of something that you can have a go at. Any questions, drop us an email, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the next video. Thanks very much for watching. Bye bye now.